Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness.
The Bible contains remarkable stories of miracles and divine interventions. Moses parted the sea. Peter healed a man lame from his mother's womb. Jesus drove demons out of people and raised others from the dead. But are these types of events still happening today?
We too have a beam of divine light and guidance that God has put within the heart of every man. And it's one of the greatest proofs that there is a God.
More amazing supernatural things are happening than we realize.
This is Divine Intervention, the interview show that features intriguing people who've experienced the hand of God in amazing ways. Divine Intervention was created and produced with the purpose of encouraging believers, spiritual seekers, and skeptics alike that Jesus is alive and is still performing miracles and working in the world today.
I believe in miracles.
Here's your host, Daniel Fazina.
Hello, friend, and welcome to Divine Intervention Radio. Yes, I am your host, Daniel Fazina. So excited to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining me and taking time out of your day to spend with me and listen to what I think is going to be another great show. We've got an awesome guest who's going to be joining us. His name is Rich Davis, and he's the founder of the Pure H2O Project. He's a clean water advocate and an entrepreneur, financial counselor, and he also grew up as a missionary's kid in the island nation of Haiti. And he's got some pretty cool testimonies there, from having run-ins with witch doctors to amazing miracle healing. So we'll get to him in a minute. But before we do that, I would just like to remind you where you can connect with me. I'm on Twitter at DanielFazina1. That's Daniel Fazina, the numeral 1 on Twitter.com, Facebook.com/Divine Intervention Radio, and of course on the website DivineInterventionRadio.com, DivineInterventionRadio.com, where you can tune in and hear all of the archives of the show in case you missed one live. They got a lot of testimonies there, a lot of amazing miracles. You can even sort them by category. If you have a specific desire or a need to hear something on, let's say, alcoholism or resurrection from the dead or miracle healing, you can actually click on the links for the category and it'll pull up stories that are related to that category. So it's a pretty cool thing, new feature on the new redesigned website, DivineInterventionRadio.com. So go there and check it out. And if you haven't picked up a copy of my new book, Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today, it is also available on DivineInterventionRadio.com. I hope you can go there and pick up a copy, maybe get one for a friend and give it away. It's a great witnessing tool for people because it contains stories, amazing miracle testimonies of what the Lord has done today in modern times, not just what you read about in the Bible, but what he's still doing today. And I find that people, they really like stories. They respond to stories. It opens a conversation, opens minds, opens hearts, and it's a great way to get someone to consider the possibility that God might be real. They might not step into a church, but they might open a book about miracles. And hopefully the book will point them to the God of miracles. So if you're a believer, it's going to really strengthen your faith. And if you're a skeptic, it's going to challenge you. So again, the book is Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today. And you can find it at DivineInterventionRadio.com. All right, let's get to our guest. Again, his name is Rich Davis. He is the founder of the Pure H2O Project. He's also a financial counselor and missionary's kid. His website is pureh2oproject.org. And it's my pleasure to welcome Rich Davis right now on Divine Intervention Radio. Rich, welcome to Divine Intervention Radio. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, great. Well, I'm happy to have you, and I was very excited to meet you at the National Publicity Summit. And you told me a little bit about your background. It's hard to get all of it in 2.5 minutes that we had together, but I noticed that you were a missionary kid and grew up in Haiti. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I actually lived in Haiti for a few years with my parents, and it was a wonderful experience. I think everyone should take the chance to take the opportunity to go to a third world country and spend time giving back. I think it's so essential. But it's something that's very important, and it was a huge impact on my life.
No kidding. I had an opportunity to do some missionary work on Hispaniola, not in Haiti itself, but next door in the Dominican Republic, and it was really life-changing for me. I'd never been that close to abject poverty, and just to see the people down there who were so full of life and so appreciative of everything, and it was just an amazing time, but also kind of sad to see the conditions that they were living in. But anyway, why don't you tell us about your background growing up? I mean, what was that like for you growing up there and, witnessing things that maybe your typical American child is not exposed to?
Well, it was very interesting because I grew up in Anson County, North Carolina, and that was what some would consider a poor town. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, but grew up in Anson County, chicken farming town, and then I moved from there to Haiti. And so I didn't know that I was poor because everybody else around me was poor.
Okay.
And so it wasn't really a yardstick to be able to measure. But then when I got to Haiti, I saw what real poverty looked like. And, from the moment you get off the airplane, there are children there begging, bon moins good, they want money to buy bread. And, so it's a huge, learning curve very rapidly for a young person. And, so for me to be able to go into that country and be with my family and then see what it was like for us to be able to help others. And the thing that was so impressive to me was we were not there under, per se, a flag of a certain denomination or a certain anything that was bricks and mortar. Really the thing that we always said to people was, Jesus you, or Jesus loves you. If we were doing a dental clinic, if we were doing a medical clinic, if we were doing feeding programs, building a school, building a church, no matter if we were entertaining groups coming in, everything we did was left with Jesus Remiu. And so it was all based on, the name of Jesus or Yeshua. And so it was so important for me to be able to learn that at such a young man, the power of what we can do to help others.
That is awesome. And, I totally relate to, going down there and seeing the poverty and the children begging and stuff like that. And I remember I was at the airport and I had a little mishap with my passport or my visa or something like that. And there was a young man there who helped me out and kind of was guiding me around. And I helped him by buying him lunch at a fast food place in the airport. And I remember asking him, well, what do you want? He's like, oh, I don't care, just whatever. And I was like, okay. So I bought him a meal at this, I think it was maybe a Wendy's or something. And we sat down to eat together, and he looked at the price. He's like, wow, that's so expensive. And to me, it was nothing, but I later learned that it was about a week's salary for him. I couldn't even imagine that. And then I remember him eating, and, we couldn't finish the whole meal, so he took his leftover French fries, which I normally would, in the States, I would just throw it out. But he gave it to some local kids who were just, walking around there, and they didn't have anything. And it was so eye-opening for me to see that, just the mentality there. Come to find out later on, we were doing construction work, building a church and a storm shelter. I think their daily pay was about $6 or $7 at that time for a day's work, in construction, which was wow. It was amazing, eye-opening.
Yeah, I totally remember the guys would stand out in the street in the morning with a shovel or whatever tool they had, and they would wait for someone to come by and pick them up. And by early morning or mid morning, if they had not got picked up, they weren't going to have a job for the day.
Yeah, it's wow. It's amazing what you see over there. And I remember we stayed at a couple of friends of mine had they had the anniversary they were celebrating down there, and they put them up. The missionaries put them up in a 4 or 5 star hotel right on the beach with a swim up bar, and just a really, really nice hotel. And it was $13 US per day. Unbelievable. And yet that was still a lot of money for the locals. But anyway, let's talk about some of your experiences down there, because you experienced God in really profound ways and kind of some miracles as well. There was one where you had an incident with a broken arm. You want to tell us about that one? What happened with that?
Yes, sir. There was a few that were like that. In one of the instances, we had to walk up the mountain from where I lived. I lived in Kinskov, which is above, the capital of Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. Mm-hmm. And we would walk up to wait in line to get our water, and there was actually a pecking order. And so pretty much the people that walked up the hill to get the water were the women. and I was a young man waiting in line, and we would carry these Culligan, 5-gallon Culligan jugs on top of our head. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of people walking with those baskets or jugs on their head.
Yep.
We'd roll a towel up and put it on our head, and I was actually coming down the mountain and carrying the water, and after it rained there, a lot of things go in the street. People defecate in the street. There's, vegetables are in the street. It's a very slick scenario when it's been raining. And I was coming down the hill with the water, and what happened was I slipped and fell, and I tried to catch myself. And when I did, I broke my wrist. Oof. And so I had a broken wrist on my arm, and we're in Haiti. We're in the pretty rural part of Haiti. We're an hour away from the major city. It's not where you just hop in and go to the hospital and get a splint. And so we took care of it the best we could at that time before we went to go get it checked out. And my parents prayed for it and laid hands on me. And by the next day, my arm was completely healed and better. After we had gotten it checked out, it was completely healed and better. And I did not have to deal with 4 weeks or 3 weeks of having it in a cast or anything associated with that. So it was a very wonderful experience, especially for me having gone through my childhood. That was one of 8 broken wrists that I'd had in my childhood, and it was the only broken wrist that I had that was healed. And
did you say you broke your wrist 8 times?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
I was very
active,
excited to do many things, and so if it was either sliding in the home plate, just playing kickball at the elementary school, or if I was riding my bike and flipped over my handlebars, I had 2 broken arms at one time. So
oh my gosh.
It was a kind of an amazing thing. But the broken arm in Haiti was the most memorable one because God healed me.
That's awesome. So you've had a lot of experience with broken wrists, and you knew for sure that moment in Haiti it was broken for sure.
Yeah, we did have it looked at, and they started praying for it, and we had it looked at, and it was, diagnosed as a broken wrist. And then, I received prayer, and literally the next day it was completely better.
That's awesome.
Got a clean bill of health.
I love hearing stories like that because it's like, when you're in a position where you can't get to medical attention that you need, God kind of steps in and fills the gap and fills the need, whatever your need is. I remember talking to Dr. Chauncey Crandall from Florida, who was describing his experiences with missionaries and healings and stuff like that. And there were times when they prayed, and he wanted to see a miraculous healing, and they were like, "No, you're a doctor. You can help us," and the miracle didn't happen. But yet, in the situations where they really were desperate and needed a doctor and couldn't get to one, God stepped in and did a miraculous healing. So it's like he knows what we need when we need it, and it's pretty awesome the way he works.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, so that was your broken arm story, and then you also had another, actually a couple of incidents where you want to tell us those where you really experienced the supernatural in a very kind of profound way, traveling into the bush and your encounter with a witch doctor. Tell us that story.
Yes, I was a very young man. 14 years old, and I was traveling with a very adventurous, as we could probably tell with the 8 broken arms, but I was traveling with a missionary, and she was, her name was Marilyn. She was from Ohio, and she was fluent in the language of Creole, and so we decided to go out and witness to some families in the bush, and so it was a couple hours to get to the river. And then once we got across the river in a dugout canoe, we had to walk in the rest of the way. And so we had a pretty good time to travel, and we actually planned on being out there overnight and coming back after that. And so it was an expected trip to take a while. And what happened for me to be able to know that there is a spiritual world, a spiritual realm? I had read while I was in Haiti, a couple of books in the series, This Present Darkness and Piercing in the Darkness.
Oh, I read those.
So it was, you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
It was very
Frank Peretti, yep.
eye-opening for me to have gone through that. And then I get out there, and there's this disturbance as we approach this village. And I mean, we are in the middle of nowhere in Haiti. I mean, we're between Port-au-Prince and the DR, going deeper into the island, and there's no paved roads. There's no power, no electricity, no TVs. Mud huts. People are walking around with bottoms on, no tops. They use the restroom in the street. Men or women, it doesn't matter. Kids are completely naked just to set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And we are, going to witness to these families that are desolate. And when we start to get in there, we could hear a ruckus, and we didn't know what was going on. And the witch doctor was all up in arms, if that's the way you could say it. He was very upset. And what he told us, and this is my interpretation now at 38 years old, 24 years later, but what he told us at the time was that he was very upset that we were there, that his first option for us was to leave, that we did not need to be there. And after speaking with him, Marilyn spoke with him in Creole and asked him, what was wrong, and he was very upset because he knew we were on the way there. And the reason he knew we were on the way there was because, and he didn't say angels, but he said our spirits were battling his spirits, and his spirits were not communicating with him the way that they were before we started to come.
Mm.
So it was almost like the Lord was laying down a path, or spiritually was laying down a path before us, so we would be able to be protected while we were there spiritually. And he knew spiritually that we were coming ahead of time before we ever arrived. Now, we did not send an email. We didn't send a text message. This was in 1989. We didn't, I promise you, we did not send a dove and tell him we were on the way. He does not have HBO. He's never seen The Twilight Zone. This is completely real-world scenario. And so he was so upset he had started a fire. And so he wanted to give us a challenge. And, of course, growing up as a preacher's kid and a missionary kid, I've heard of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Moses probably being one of them that we all know very well with the staff and the snakes. And so he said, what I'll do is I've got a fire here burning, and I've got an iron rod. And he had the iron rod that was in a circular and then beat flat on one end. And he said, I'm going to stick my face onto this iron rod.
Oh, my gosh.
And my spirits will, he always said spirits. He never said the word God. He said, my spirits will protect me, and I will not get burned. And he said, if your spirits are real, if you're real, who you're representing to the people in my village is real, then you stick your face on it, and then let's see if you get burned. And, of course, I'm sitting there, and, in 2014 language, my spidey senses are going up. I'm okay, what's about to happen?
And you're a 14-year-old kid?
I'm 14 years old.
Wow.
I always loved movies like Karate Kid or whatever. Yep. I thought, well, I'm going to have to figure out how to find my inner wax on, wax off or something. I got to get out of this situation. And Marilyn said, just be calm. She said, just calm down. And remember, Marilyn is 5 foot tall, maybe 100 pounds. And she's like, just be calm. It's okay. And she had a powerful presence about her. And so she talks to him, and she starts to quote scripture. And she says that she doesn't have to, compete with him or whatever word she used in Creole. And so we basically, spoke with him. We left some literature behind. We got ourselves out of that situation, and we left. Now, I don't know what the impact of that was for the people in the village, but I can tell you what the impact of that was for me.
And what was that?
Is that for the rest of my life, no one can ever tell me that God doesn't exist. No one can ever tell me there's not a spiritual realm. No one could ever take that away from me. Maybe other people on earth don't have that profound of a spiritual experience, but for me, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt and look you in your eyes and tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it is real. He is real. It is real. And, so for that's so powerful for me to be with me for the rest of my life. And I share that with people that are atheist or agnostic or, not sure of where they want to be. And I'm not sharing it in a way to want to push somebody one direction or another, but I can just tell you with my own conviction what I experienced. And so if they're ever curious, I'd love to take them to Haiti, and we'll go for a walk and see if they can have the same experience.
Yeah, one of the reasons I love talking to missionaries so much is because they have the coolest stories, because they go out on the frontier of the spiritual the spiritual front lines, I guess you could say, and God meets them there. It's some awesome stuff happens there. Friend, you're listening to Divine Intervention Radio. I am your host, Daniel Fazina, and we are visiting with our special guest, Rich Davis, and he is a missionary's kid, and he's also an entrepreneur and a businessman, and we're going to talk about some of those things as well as we go forward. But Rich, I've had experiences too where, praying for people and hearing their voices change, and an entity that is not them, that person, is speaking to me. People who have been possessed and manifesting in front of me. It's just, when you experience that sort of thing, you kind of know like that something is going on here, and there's more to this life than meets the eye. And when you read about, in the Gospels, you see that Jesus encountered this kind of on a regular basis. People were being possessed and tormented with demonic spirits and all sorts of things, and it was kind of normal, I guess you could say, for that time period. And I think many Americans don't realize just how normal it is, or how everyday it is in many parts of the world. Maybe not as much in the United States as in other parts of the world, where they still practice witchcraft and ancestral worship as a religion, but it's definitely real, and it's definitely out there. I remember the friend I was praying with, he was from Africa, and the woman we were praying for, who manifested these spirits and was talking in a different language and different voice, she was struggling with cancer, and when we were praying for her, my friend who's from Africa started rebuking this spirit and saying, "Come out of her, let her go," and I'm thinking, like, what's going on here? I'm thinking I'm just praying for cancer. Come to find out, this woman, she starts speaking and saying, "No, she belongs to us," like in a really weird voice. And a few minutes later, she had no recollection of what she said. But we came to find out later that one of her family members was involved in witchcraft, and that's when the illness started coming back into her life. And my friend from Africa, he's like, "Oh man, this is nothing. You should see what I deal with back home."
Well, I totally agree, and
yeah.
There's been plenty of experiences, like that, even in the United States, and I think it goes on here, very much. We just call it mental health,
right?
And so we try to put those people in a place with white walls and pads and pretend that it's a mental illness, when they actually, could have a possession or something similar to that. I totally believe and agree that Satan is alive and well all across the globe, even in the United States of America, and that's something that we have to take into consideration.
Right. I would encourage any medical professionals out there to consider trying to recognize and treat the whole person, body, soul, and spirit, because mental illness, of course, is a reality, but spiritual illness and spiritual possession is still something real to be reckoned with. And I don't personally know how exactly to recognize the difference initially, but when someone starts speaking in a different language and a different voice, that's probably not mental illness, I would think.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to your story. You have two other pretty amazing experiences that happened to you, one involving, I guess the last one was when you actually were falling down a mountain and miraculously were kind of saved from a very serious injury. You want to tell us about that one?
Yes, I have a community give back that we do called Back to the Basics, and we say just like Grandma and Grandpa used to do. And we were actually going out with people that are a part of that group, and we were spending time with them in the mountains of North Carolina. And we were hiking, and we were on the tail end of about a 5-hour hike, and it was in the summer of this year, 2014. We were having a wonderful trip. And before we took off on the trip, we said a prayer that we would be kept safe on our trip. And part of the reasoning is on the trail that I had walked previously, but getting ready for the event, I walked up on about a 250-pound bear. And so I let everybody know of my experience and said, I just want you to be aware. And we're going to pray, and we're going to ask, for God's covering, and we're just going to go ahead through the woods. And a bear really doesn't want anything to do with a gang of people, so we were going to be okay. And we were coming down the mountain, and I'd called ahead on the radio and let them know that we would be coming to camp. It was approaching around 3 o'clock, and that we would be having lunch. We were going to have a late lunch cooked by kettle cooking. And so we were coming down the mountain, and there was a couple of guys in the front, and I was, kind of in the middle of the pack, and I decided to go ahead and just go down the mountain a little bit quicker. Here comes that young kid that had 8 broken arms. And so I grabbed hold of a vine in a tree, and I'm 6 foot tall. I played rugby in college, over 200 pounds. And so when I grab a vine these days, the vine usually gives way. I grabbed the vine, and I swung around. Somehow this vine did not give way, and so I came out in a half circle and came back to the mountain, and I landed. Well, that only made me more excited, and so I took off down the mountain, and if you can imagine a guy jumping up in the air and kicking his heels together, I was so excited it felt like I was 14 years old again. And as I come down the mountain, you know how you can post your hand up against a tree to try to grab your balance and recompose yourself and then keep going. Well, I posted my right hand against a tree, and when I did, the tree broke.
Oh, boy.
About 5 foot off the ground. And when it did, if you imagine driving a go-kart right into the wall, your body would you fold over the steering wheel, and you would have that kind of an injury. And so what happened was my body hit the tree. The tree broke 5 foot off the ground, and so I basically rolled over the tree, and my body stopped right at my rib cage, right where my heart is, and I rotated 180 degrees back up the mountain, and then I fell off of the tree. It did not impel me or break my skin, but it went very deep. And when I landed, I immediately ripped my shirt open. I could see my body turning purple, and I immediately thought in my head was, oh no, what have I done to my family? Kathy, Connor, and Ashton, what have I done to my family? Because I knew that it hurt very bad. I had a nurse and I had an EMT person, and they immediately started counting to see how long it was going to be between my breaths.
Oh, boy.
And they immediately started putting their hands on my pulse to see what was going on, and I just said, oh, God, and I put my fist into my chest where the tree was. And when I did, I could put my whole fist into a cavity.
Oh, my.
And
wow.
So basically the doctor told me that he was going to hold me and let me die in his arms. And he thought that I had perforated a liver, perforated an intestine, or I had severed my aorta. And he knew that I was going to die, and he was just going to hold me. There was nothing they could do out in the woods.
My goodness.
And I just said, oh, God, please help me. And it just felt like it got very bright, very light, and very warm. And all of a sudden, I felt like I came back to a normal Rich. I felt like I was in pain. I felt like I was laying there in this doctor's lap in the woods, but I felt like I was coming back, and I started to ask questions and communicate with them about what was going on, and my chest completely filled back in, and I don't know how to explain that, but my rib cage was completely pushed back. It looked like I had collapsed a lung. If you think about an NFL player being on the bottom of a stack of about 1,000 pounds with a football stuck right there in his chest, I would have had that kind of an indention.
Oh, my gosh.
And the chest came back, and everything filled back in, and I went to the emergency room. When I came off the mountain, they prayed for me and anointed me with oil and prayed for me, and then I went to the emergency room and had a CAT scan and had an MRI, and they said miraculously, somehow, we don't understand, you don't have anything torn inside of your body. We understand what happened to you. We've talked to the others. Physically, it's not possible for you to have your rib cage pushed back, have your lung, look as though it's collapsed, have an indentation where your heart should be, and not have any problems with yourself physically at all whatsoever. It was completely 100% a miracle. And, the reason that I want to tell everybody else is because, the next time that I need that angel to be there and look out for me, I want to give God the credit, and I want to say thank you.
Praise God. That is awesome. I love that. Wow. Phenomenal stuff. And Rich, I just have to ask you this: when you reached out and you grabbed that vine and it swung and it didn't give way, do you think that was divine intervention? I'm sorry.
I like that. I actually know where that vine is. I might go do a little outtake with that and send it to you.
I love
and
that.
you'll look for some divine intervention.
Yes, he is divine, and we are the branches, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, Again, we're visiting with our special guest, Rich Davis, right here on Divine Intervention Radio, and we will be right back with more of his story and some of the great work he is doing in helping people with their finances and with their health. So stay with us here on Divine Intervention. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Divine Intervention with Daniel Fazina, and we'll return in just a moment.
I believe in miracles.
Times are tough, not getting easier, but there's an opportunity that could make a significant change in your financial situation. People are paying too much for home utilities, and everybody has them. Help friends and family save money and get paid for it. No obligation. You don't even have to talk to anyone unless you want to. Just listen to a 3-minute recorded message. Call now, 203-717-3124. 203-717-3124. Listen, decide, and you could be on your way to a better tomorrow. 203-717-3124. Divine Intervention welcomes the support of Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants. Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants is a family-owned and operated Christian business serving their clients with quality accounting services for over 40 years, offering full-service accounting for any type of business, large or small, in any state of the union. Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants, 12 Oak Street, No. 5, West Hampton Beach, New York, 11978. Phone 631-288-3334. That's 631-288-3334.
Satan, your kingdom must come down. Satan, your kingdom must come down. I heard the voice of Jesus Christ. Satan, your kingdom must come down. Tear your kingdom down. Pray till they tear your kingdom down. I heard the voice of Jesus Christ. Satan, your kingdom must come down.
Welcome back to Divine Intervention Radio. I'm your host, Daniel Fazina, and we are visiting with our special guest, Rich Davis, and he is a missionary kid, pastor's kid, and he's also the founder of the Pure H2O Project, and he is a clean water advocate. Rich, welcome back.
Hey, Daniel, thank you for having me.
No problem. So before the break, we were talking about some of your experiences as a missionary kid in Haiti, and you were telling us about how you were online to go get water and people had to carry jugs to either a river or a spigot. And I experienced that too in the Dominican Republic. The missionaries I was with had dug a freshwater well in their village, and all the people would line up at that spigot every day with their jugs of water, and they would come to get fresh water. And it made such a difference in the community because prior to that, they would have to walk for a mile or more to get dirty water out of a river. And there was all this waterborne illness and stuff, so it really transformed the village and really helped in their health conditions. So why don't you tell us about your Pure H2O project? How did you get into that, and what is it all about?
Well, the Pure H2O Project is a consumer advocacy nonprofit organization that I founded here in the United States. And the reason I founded it is because I have twin sons that are 6 years old. And our generation, again, I'm 38 years old, Generation Xer, our generation, as you know, Daniel, does a lot of reading. Mm-hmm. And so I was one of those guys that read What to Expect When You're Expecting and, you know, how to be the best father for this and that when your kids come along. And it was so important for my wife, Kathy, and I to be able to make sure that we had the best help for our children. And the rate of autism in the United States of America has gone up 300% in just the last 10 years.
Wow.
And so a lot of people are curious and always wondering, what is making this autism rate so high? And we're not quite sure. A lot of people think it could be the shots that are given to the children, the vaccinations with the high mercury and high thermosol. But there's still, doctors that argue over that. Could that be true or not? And you have other celebrities, their children have autism, and they brought awareness to it. And so I wanted to research what could be some of the culprits. And what I found out was in the 70s that the federal government put out the Clean Drinking Water Act. And do you remember the movie that was called Aaron Brockovich with
I do remember
Roberts?
that.
Remember
Yes.
that movie?
I didn't see the film, but I remember it when it came out.
Yeah, she was a racy assistant to an attorney that kind of took on her own little case and her own little idea. And really the hexavalent that she found in the water that was being put in the water by the corporations that were there are still in our water today. And there's still chromium that's in our water, and some of the petroleum-based, things that are in our water that can cause for sickness in our families. One of the things that I also found out was when they put together the Clean Drinking Water Act, they also told the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to be able to put together a candidate contaminant list to be able to know what's allowed to be in our water, what's the maximum levels that can be in our water. Well, it was almost 24 years later, after the act was put in place by Congress, before the EPA ever came out with the first list. And when they came out with the first list, less than 50% of the items that were listed on there as harmful to your health were actually not allowed in your water by your municipal and commercial drinking opportunities out there in the United States. And so there's been 3 other CCLs that have been put out. We're going to CCL4, and the thing that makes me so upset is that the last chance for anyone to make comments on CCL4 were in July of 2012. Well, we're in December of 2014, and CCL4 has yet to be posted, has yet to be listed. And the reason why, in an article that was recently published and by Knight Ridder and picked up across the nation, was the EPA admitted that they willfully have lowered the standards of your municipal drinking water and the drinking water that they allow for corporations to be able to use, because if they kept the water quality in the United States of America, not the Dominican Republic, not Haiti, in the United States of America, if they kept the water quality at where it needed to be, those municipalities and those corporations would not be profitable.
Wow.
So we have seniors, according to a report that came out from the Harvard Medical Journal, that seniors have heightened levels of osteoporosis, heightened levels of arthritis. Children, babies, through some of the contaminants that are in our water, can have retardation of the development of their neuro system. They have fluorosis, which is a browning of the teeth or white spots on the teeth. There are so many elements that are allowed to be in our water, and the EPA also has what's called an MCL, a maximum contaminant list. And through that maximum contaminant list, did you know, Daniel, that you're allowed to drink arsenic on a daily basis? You're allowed to drink copper on a daily basis and lead, because of the infrastructure that was put in place in the United States of America. Our piping systems, depending upon what city you lived in, are made of copper or lead. And so you're just automatically allowed to take on these heavy metals. And what happens is those have been led to believe to be part of Alzheimer's and other types of diseases that happen with our intestines. And so it's a huge question mark for me right now of why would we be allowed to have this water that has these levels of contaminants, because we're worried about a municipality or a corporation being profitable. And so very similar to that, for your listeners in Detroit, Detroit currently has an advocacy program in place because of the privatization of water. Right now, a large part of our municipalities have privatized water to publicly traded companies to be able to provide that water. The water quality and the water standard has actually gone down, but the price or cost of the water has gone up. So through the Pure H2O Project, what we're asking is that people sign our petition, and through signing our petition, we can have a voice. And with our voice, we'll go and speak with the EPA, speak with the government, speak with Congress, and speak with our municipalities, and demand the high quality of water that we should have here in the United States of America for our citizens.
Very interesting. I'm kind of conflicted about the whole idea of privatization versus government-run stuff, because usually you would think when private, competition comes in, the price would go down and the quality would go up. But you're saying it's the opposite?
Well, it actually is the opposite, because these are publicly traded companies, and they have one thing that they have to look out for, and that's the bottom line. They have to make a profit for the shareholders. And so even here in Charlotte, North Carolina, anyone can Google brown water in Mint Hill, and there's brown water being served by a national publicly traded company into people's taps. And so they have to go out and buy their own bottled water. They have to buy their own $2,000 and $3,000 filtration systems, because they're on private water in their community, but it's brown water that has contamination in it.
And is there a choice of which company they can get the water from?
Well, I'm sure that they could probably go in and do a vote through as an HOA or a POA and be able to change who they're doing business with. There'd probably be a process for that, but sure. Currently it's just been covered by our local news media outlets as, one of those, action item things where they want to cover and let people know what's going on.
Oh, wow. I remember back, maybe it was 15 years ago or maybe more now, we actually switched from well water, which we had since I was born, to city water. And I was kind of upset about that. I didn't want it. All the neighbors wanted city water. They wanted the town water to come in pumped. I wanted my own well. But people said, well, it's... it could be contaminated. It may not be good for you. And the water pressure is certainly better with city water. But I'm kind of one of those guys that, I don't know where that water's coming from. I'd rather get it from my own backyard. What are your thoughts on wells versus, municipal water supplies?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because, through municipal water supplies after the 50s, we started the fluoridation of water. And there's a huge concern about the fluoridation of water. Part of that Harvard Medical Review that I told you about earlier, one of the things that they found out was for levels that were higher than 0.08 in the water of fluoridation, that they found it to be harmful to our health. And so now the current municipal level is set at 0.07. And that's pretty disappointing to me that they only set it at that level, so close to a harmful rate. And we've actually had people that have signed our petition come in and bring samples of their water from local municipalities around here, and their levels were at 0.08. They were not at 0.07, so they were actually at the harmful level. But to go back to what you're saying with the wells, that's something that you have to be very careful about as well. Scientists have been testing in our estuaries our fish. And a lot of the fish that they pull out have enough caffeine in their body, just as though they went to Starbucks that morning. And what is happening is, in our society, people are taking a tremendous amount of medicine, medication to get up in the morning, medication to have a good day, medication to go to bed, or if you have other medical ailments, and that is not fully metabolized in your body. That is passed through your urinary tract and goes into the sewer system. That then gets into our estuaries, it gets into our rivers, it gets into our lakes. It's now being passed to our animals. It also is in the water table. The water table is where you draw your water from for your well. So depending upon the hydrology of the area that you're in and the geology of the area that you're in, you have to make sure that your well is deep enough to get clean water, but not so deep that you miss water altogether, and that's a very tricky situation. You also have what's called the cone of depression based upon the amount of water that you use. And so you could actually draw water in from other areas based upon the amount of water that's you're using or other people are using in your region in your water table. And the reason you got to be careful of that is companies like Monsanto and DuPont have put out what are called Roundup Ready soybean, Roundup Ready corn. If you read the label of Roundup, it tells you that it's going to kill you.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Farmers take and put thousands of gallons of this out, into these farmlands. It then washes away into our soil. It goes right down into our water table, and now these are in your drinking water through your well system. So you have to be very careful. I agree with you 100%. I use the well, but I'm down gradient from a golf course. I'm not on a golf course, but it's up the creek for me, and so I have to make sure that I have the right filtration in my home. And the normal testing that you do just for your home that is required by the EPA for a standard well does not cover the things that you would want to look for if you had contaminants from Roundup or contaminants from inorganic material or material that came from medication or other types of material, you have to do different levels of testing. And that testing could be as expensive as $2,000 per test. And so we're trying to work now for a way for people to be able to test their own wells, to be able to get those results at a much less expensive cost.
Right. That was actually my follow-up question. Friend, you're listening to Divine Intervention Radio. We're speaking with Rich Davis. He is the founder of the Pure H2O Project. He's also a missionary kid and pastor's kid, and we kind of heard about some of his amazing miracle testimonies in the first half of the show. But now we're talking about his passion to bring clean water to people everywhere, starting here at home in the United States. Now, Rich, I want to ask you, what do you think would be a good way for people to find out, first of all, what's in their water, and then how to purify it, how to make it safe?
Well, we're currently working on that process right now. They can go to our website, pureh2oproject.org, and sign the petition, and we would keep in touch with them. And one of the other things that we really want to be able to do is, it's so important for people to look at their labels and see non-GMO or certified organic, or they go to restaurants that boast that they've gone from locally owned, locally grown, farm-to-table food. And they've got this organic food that was now put into the sink and washed with heavy metals and or radionuclides or other contaminants that are allowed by the federal government and the local municipalities to be put in their water, and now they're eating it on their salad. And so we want to be able to allow for people to go and see a sticker on the front door, an emblem on the front door of the restaurant or their dentist office or wherever they go, and they'd know that that place was a safe place for them to be able to have water just from the tap without having to spend an extra $5 for a bottle of San Pellegrino. And so as far as the filtration and ways for them to be able to help, they can go to our website for resources that we have available there.
Okay, and again, it's pureh2oproject.org. And if you want to sign the petition, pureh2oproject.org/petition. Very interesting. And, this whole subject of water is so critical to life in general, And I remember, again, going back to the Dominican Republic when those missionaries I was staying with had dug that well, and they made a spigot on the outside of their compound wall, and the people would line up every morning with their jugs and get water, and they painted a beautiful mural of Jesus there with children, and they put a Bible verse on it, John 4:13, I believe it is, where Jesus said to the woman, "Whoever drinks this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up to everlasting life." And I thought that was so poignant and so apropos. Here is everyone coming to get their water, and they're being reminded every day that they need the living water that only Christ can give. It's a really cool thing. So I want to commend you on your advocacy work and what you're doing with the Pure H2O Project. And you also counsel people on their finances as well. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I guess you would call that what you would say is my day job.
Okay.
And I started, studied economics in college and got a degree in personal financial planning. And for me, when I started working in the financial planning arena, the company that I was associated with in the beginning really wanted to be able to help educate middle-class America on their finances. And I thought that was such a noble cause, because what I learned was those that had money were given information. Those that didn't have money were often overlooked. And so it really kept people in this certain classes. And usually at families that had money were teaching their children a certain way to be able to handle money. Families that did not have money, their children were going to college, getting credit cards, running up debt, and really not having good money habits. And so it was very important for me to be able to be a part of something like that. But I also saw that go forward that people could not afford the information. So I began BEST FQ. BEST FQ is an acronym, Billionaire Economic Security Tactics. And we have IQ for intellectual intelligence, EQ for emotional intelligence, and I was the first person to trademark FQ for financial intelligence. And so through my company, I'm able to help high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, and I'm able to provide them with information that they need to protect themselves for legacy planning, retirement planning, and things like that. I charge them accordingly. And then through FQ, through financial intelligence, I offer information as part of my give back to the community. And I offer that information through a mentorship, and I do not charge a fee for it. And I want to be able to help 76 million Americans understand their finances and be able to change their finances for the good. And so if you have any one of your listeners that would like to be able to increase their financial intelligence, I'd be very happy to be able to mentor them through our website, either through our videos or also live in a webinar or a one-on-one. And that's my passion, is to be able to help people understand the rules of the game that they're playing. The game is not the same as it was when your mom and dad were growing up and when your grandma and grandpa were growing up. The rules of the game have changed. And I really want to see people be successful. And I know for sure that Satan has had a huge attack on the family. And the way that Satan has had an attack on the family, I believe, is through removing dad from the home, first of all, and secondly, through divorce. And I know that finances is a huge fighting problem that can happen in the home with mom and dad in front of the kids. And so my passion would be able to save the home, save the family, save the marriage, and be able to help people with their finances. So if there's any way that I could help any of your listeners be able to do that, that's my passion, and I'd be happy to help them with their financial intelligence.
Well, Rich, give out your website again so people can get a hold of you.
It's www.bestfq, BEST, F as in Frank, Q as in Queen.com.
bestfq.com. Again, our guest is Rich Davis. He is the founder of BestFQ and also the Pure H2O Project. He's also a missionary's kid. And Rich, I really appreciate what you're doing in that you've got a missionary's heart. You want to help people, and yet you're also in the business and nonprofit world making a difference with the talents that God has given you. And I think that's very commendable. So I want to ask you to please keep up the great work. And, one final question I had for you, I guess. How did you come up with the number 76 million? Why would you like to help that many people?
Well, it's a number that we have to have an impact. We have 300-plus million Americans, and if we really, truly want to have an impact, if we really, truly want to have a change to be able to help Americans, then we're going to have a huge impact. We can't just help 1,000 or 100. We need to be able to help millions. And so 76 million kind of goes back to our Declaration of Independence of 1776, and it also, I think would have a profound impact where we could pay it forward, where one generation would teach the next generation, would teach the next generation. And I'll tell you, Daniel, something that happened just recently that made me understand how attainable that goal was that recently one of the top 3 financial institutions in the world, in the United States and in the world, had a breach of their security. And the list of customers that their data was breached was 76 million.
Wow.
And when I heard that on the radio, I thought, wow, that is just one company has 76 million customers. Of course I can go out there and reach 76 million Americans.
Amen. Well, I wish you all the best with that. Thank you so much, Rich, for what you do. Thank you for sharing your amazing miracle testimonies with us and, pointing people to the Lord. And, again, just keep up the great work you're doing with BestFQ and also the Pure H2O Project. Once again, Rich Davis is our special guest. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right. Friend, that about does it for this episode of Divine Intervention Radio. I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope this episode has encouraged you to know that God is real, still working in the world, and doing miracles and intervening in people's lives. God willing, we'll see you again next week for another exciting episode of Divine Intervention. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to Divine Intervention with your host, Daniel Fazina. You can email Daniel at divineintervention@mail.com. That's divineintervention@mail.com. All programs of Divine Intervention are available online at divineinterventionradio.com. That's divineinterventionradio.com. Join us next time here on Divine Intervention.
I believe in miracles.
Times are tough, not getting easier, but there's an opportunity that could make a significant change in your financial situation. People are paying too much for home utilities, and everybody has them. Help friends and family save money and get paid for it. No obligation. You don't even have to talk to anyone unless you want to. Just listen to a 3-minute recorded message. Call now, 203-717-3124. 203-717-3124. Listen, decide, and you could be on your way to a better tomorrow. 203-717-3124.